unable to complete even the most basic tasks necessary to win an election. They can't even indulge in political cynicism that might have helped them to win. They might have gone through the motions of promoting one of Bernie Sanders' signature policies, but they can't even commit to an image of the tiniest reforms. So now they're stuck in political no man's land with their standard bearer, Hillary Clinton, refusing to disappear as she ought to do. This conundrum has forced them to feed a steady diet of Russophobia because they have nothing else to offer and they want to divert attention from their failures. Clinton and her minions won't dare talk about how the Democratic Party created this mess. They are responsible for Trump winning, not the former FBI Director Comey and not Vladimir Putin. Just to give you an example of how they've discredited themselves, Congressman John Lewis, anointed as a civil rights icon, whatever that is Exhibit A in this sorry spectacle. When asked if he considered Trump a legitimate president, he said no. And why? Because of Russia. Mr. Civil Rights icon said nothing about voter suppression of thousands of black Americans or the inherently undemocratic Electoral College. Nope. Russia, Russia, and more Russia is all the Democrats have on their menu because giving people what they want is forbidden. Medicare for all and free college are off the table. War is on the table. Their only complaint about Trump sending missiles to Syria a couple of months ago is that he didn't ask them first, not that he shouldn't have done it at all. I wish he had asked because it would have put them on record as being pro-war. Anyway, so now we know they can't be reformed. We should talk about what to do with them and what we should do with ourselves.
Shoot them.
First, please, no interruptions. Thank you. First thing we must do is stop voting for them. That's been my argument for some time now. Stopping Trump and Trumpism, true resistance, is impossible without getting rid of the Democratic Party. I don't say this just because their blunders cost them the election, but because their presence is antithetical to getting peace and justice. Their success depends on Republican unpopularity or marketing gimmicks such as those that came from the Obama campaign. And she had neither of those things. She hoped that just running for Obama's third term would be enough, and she hoped that Sanders' supporters would stand down even though they were insulted and given nothing. And by the way, the lesser of two evils argument is pretty much a joke. And I say this with Trump in the White House. Trump proves that presentation is everything. Everyone's talking about the Paris Climate Accords, which Trump just took the United States, removed us from. But the Climate Accords is not as advertised. In fact, that agreement permits the world temperature to rise, which is a catastrophe. It seems like a little bit, a couple of temperatures, but that's the difference between having a drought and not. It was Obama who promoted fracking and natural gas production. And despite all claims to the contrary, he increased America's carbon production. And the industrialized nations were given 5 years. The agreement was signed in 2015. Nobody has to pay attention to it for 5 years. So they have 5 years to keep producing carbon in the atmosphere, and this is hailed as some salvation. And I'm not in favor of the U.S. not being in it, but we can't act like he's the only polluter on the planet or that this agreement actually amounted to much. And also I would say Democrats are not the lesser evil. They're just a more effective evil. Obama was a deporter, a war maker, a broker of trade and austerity deals. He and his party allowed the Republicans to run up the score across the country, but didn't care as long as they had the White House deal-making authority. We must desert the Democratic Party if you haven't already. It's time to stop this deception, the self-deception, most importantly. The process of the pressures on capitalism is going to hurt many people, and I'm not nonchalant about that. But we can stop the worst of the damage by building something new and making people aware of what their problems really are. In hindsight, I believe that Donald Trump sealed his victory when he said he would build a wall on the Mexican border. And that's very sad for a lot of reasons, because people don't know what their problems really are. It's the capitalist system that's the problem. I heard this statistic recently, and I'm sure many of you have, that there are 8 billionaires whose wealth totals that of all the poor people on the planet. So this isn't a time to retreat. And trying to put lipstick on the Democratic Party pig is just that, it's retreating. So this is a time of crisis, a worldwide crisis of legitimacy, which has been created by the collapse of capitalism. The only option is to create our own crisis, one that will help people in this country and around the world. And that's how mass movements succeed and bring about change. We can't bring about change by wasting time trying to make the Democrats do what they have no interest in doing. So if left parties are spoilers, we'd better start spoiling. People have to see left candidates run for office and win them. And it's only by ignoring this discredited lesser evils argument that we'll ever be able to save this country. Unfortunately, Trump makes this hard. His racism and his ignorance and buffoonery make too many people afraid to step away from the Democrats. But I think it's important to point out that his presence is theirs, the latest in a long line of losing that goes back now nearly 10 years. We have to make the case not for reforming the Democrats, but for replacing them. That means being unapologetic about putting them out of business. Instead of having our current duopoly of a far-right party and a center-right party, let's have a far-right and a left one. And that won't be easy, because despite thinking of themselves as free-thinking, independent people, Americans are highly indoctrinated and don't know much about political alternatives. And that's because they are told there aren't any. The corporate media and the two parties themselves all collaborate to keep us feeling boxed in without any hope of change. But people know their wages haven't gone up in decades. And the younger generation have only the exploitative so-called gig economy to look forward to. The Occupy movement was successful for a moment, but it wasn't that long ago, and things have gotten worse for the average person. Half of all Americans have incomes of less than $31,000 a year, and that means half of all Americans are poor. And I think it makes sense politically to say that instead of harping on a mythical middle class. So no more reform. It's time to get busy and accentuate the crises with one that will bring about true change that has a possibility of benefiting all our lives. Thank you very much.
Okay, good afternoon. My name is Daniel.
You want to move down here? I think
that's okay.
You're good? Okay.
My name is Daniel Vila, and I'm presently chair of the Manhattan Greens, and we also have a radio program on WBAI called La Voz Latina. It's been on for some 13 years. It's Mondays at 10 p.m. on WBAI La Voz Latina, and it's in Spanish. But you don't have to be Spanish speaking to listen to the program. We have one out of every 4 or 5 programs. We try to do them in English. But even the ones that are in Spanish, you know, when I came to the U.S. when I was 5 years old, I didn't know a word in English, and 2 years later I was in school. I don't know how, and I always got A's in English. So I'm sure if you listen to Spanish a few weeks in a row, and La Voz Latina, you'll pick up a lot of it, most of it, and then you can thank me for learning Spanish, or the collective, the Latino collective. But we're also just in terms of giving you, I wanted to ask a question. Sometimes we speak to the choir. How many people here really do feel that the Democratic Party can be reformed or changed or adapted to the needs of the mass majority of people in this country, in this city? Okay, good. Okay, good. Okay, now one of the things I wanted to say, now I got to change.
Go ahead and say it.
No, but that's good, because sometimes we preach to the choir, and then we have one discourse, and then when you're not preaching to the choir, I think you have, you know, my parents were Pentecostal, and half of the time they were on the street preaching to people that were sinners. So they had a certain speech there, but then when they were in church speaking to the brothers and sisters, it was a different speech. So that's good that there are people here that really do believe in the Democratic Party. Just to let you know, I am chair of the Manhattan Greens, but I'm a communist. I'm a Marxist-Leninist. I've run, I was a member of the Puerto Rican Socialist Party back in the 1970s and 80s in Puerto Rico, Marxist-Leninist organization, which in fact in just a matter of a couple of years managed to capture the leadership of about half of the unions in Puerto Rico, and in fact the most important unions in Puerto Rico. And so I'm coming from that perspective, so that you know, although I am in the Green Party, I think that that is the vehicle right now for change in terms of progress. And you know, we worked with Jamu and Jill Stein and so on, and many other brothers and sisters, some that are here, some that are not in this room. But we think that at this moment, that is the vehicle that should be used. And although it doesn't have a revolutionary pro-working class as I think it should be, that's not the level that we have to be working at, I think, in New York City or in this country. And I'm just going to limit myself to New York City right now, because it turns out that in the last presidential elections, despite all the hoopla and all the noise, 44% of registered people in New York City, 44% did not vote, didn't vote. And if you then count all the other people, or try to count, I don't know how we could do that, that probably could have registered to vote, that were citizens and so on, or have become citizens or whatever, and are qualified to vote. An immense majority of New Yorkers didn't give a damn over these elections. And despite all the crap about, you know, Hitlery, as I call her, and Donald Trump and so on and so forth, well, there were actually less people proportionately voting in these elections, 3% less than in the previous presidential election. So something is going on. A member of the Green Party, I think Paul was in that meeting, a member of the Green Party, I ran for Congress twice. I ran against, what's his name? Rangel, Charles Rangel, and then Espaillat had the honor of running against me, and he beat me, the Democratic Party for Congress. Barely. But, but the first time I ran, I got almost 11% of the vote. The second time I ran, I got a little bit more than 3% of the vote. But it was almost, I only got 1,000 votes less the second time. 1,000 votes less the second time. The thing is that there were many more people voting in the second election, that is in 2016 presidential election. So there was a brother in the meeting, in one meeting in particular of the Green Party, who told me that I had to water down my, that's when I got the almost 11% of the votes. He says that I should water down my discourse, my Marxist or revolutionary, whatever discourse, and make it softer so that Democrats could vote for me. And, you know, no offense or anything, but I told him, damn, I don't want the votes of the Democrats. I want the votes of all those people that, you know, that are not voting Republican or Democrats, or people that are not registered, which is the majority of the people in New York City. Those are the people, and especially even if it was just one half of 1%, working class people. And I think, in my opinion, I think that it's impossible to reform the Democratic Party. And so the brothers and sisters here that believe that it can be, you know, there's this small organization, semi-secret, it's called Revolutionary Workers Organization, of which I am not a member, also called for many years Ray of Light. And they, in their publication, they use the words Republic, what is it? Republicrats. Yeah, sort of like mixing Republicans and Democrats. But you know what? In 1791, it was called the Democratic Republican Party. That's how this whole crap began. Right? Jefferson and Madison created in 1791 the Democratic Republican Party, and in 1828 it became officially the Democratic Party. So we have a party here that's 189 years old, defending the interests basically of the bourgeoisie, the ruling class, and in my opinion, it's the most sinister instrument that there is, the obstacle, biggest obstacle that there is for true democracy in this country, in this city in particular, the biggest obstacle that the working class has. Why? Because so many key community leaders, gay, black, Latino, immigrant rights, labor leaders, support, when it comes, push comes to shove, you win. They support the Democratic Party, always voting in their minds for the lesser of two evils. In my opinion, and I know a lot of you will be in disagreement here, I actually wanted Trump to win these elections. In my opinion, he was the lesser of two evils. He was the lesser of two evils for the simple reason that, you know, like Hitler, he didn't have a mask on. He was not saying he was the nice guy. I tell people like all the time that if Hitler were, for example, to tomorrow work to be president and say that she had to bomb North Korea because there were nuclear weapons about to bomb New York City, I think it would probably be done. Or if not, you know, not bomb it with a nuclear bomb and eliminate it, people would probably say that, no, let's go on with business. It was done already. Just like Iraq, it was a big mistake. And so, you know, we'll just go on with life as usual north. But if Trump even talks about it, if Trump even thinks about it in his, talks out loud in his sleep about it, and we know about it, we'll be out in the street protesting, right? And we've already seen how millions and millions and millions of people have come out in the streets against Donald Trump, which I think if Hillary had been the one of these elections, I don't think as many millions of people would have been out on the streets protesting, I think. I may be totally wrong, right? And there may be objective conditions or whatever. But in any case, that's just my belief on that little matter. I think when we get together here, I think we're also using this as an excuse so that Socialist Action could present their revolutionary socialist program to us all. No. But I'm going to beat them to it. or not, maybe. I do think that the main problem that we have here, even if you do believe that the Democratic Party is a possibility, if you believe that the Democratic Party can change and make things better, then you have to reach out to the working class and mobilize the millions of working people in this city and organize a working class program. Unions especially, I think, are the ones that are called to do this. You know, there's no reason, I cannot understand why so many unions that support the Democratic Party cannot get together in New York City and forget about organizing a labor party. I don't think it's going to be possible in this country. I really don't think. I mean, we've been trying to do that for so long. I mean, a democratic, social democratic type of labor party. Remember how Labor Advocates was attempted several years ago and became the Labor Party. There are objective reasons why it can't be done, and that is that most of those people that were leading that effort within the Labor Party advocates at first, they were really Democrats, and eventually they all wound up with the Democratic Party. Yeah, so I think so. If any reform has to be done within what we will call the bourgeois democratic organizations, I think it has to be done within the Democratic, but it has to be led by the unions. Unions have to get together and tell these corrupt bastards out there that, look, man, we need a platform that defends the interest of working people. It's that simple. But I don't think it's going to happen. I hope, I wish it will. I wish it does, and possibly the objective conditions will change. For the time being, frankly, I think that the alternative that working people have in this city, just talking about New York City, is the Green Party. But the biggest problem we have with the Green Party is the left. And I'm not talking about the Democratic Party members. I ain't talking about the Democratic Party members because I respect you because you're members of the Democratic Party and damn, you have to defend what you belong to, right? I criticize for the weakness of the Green Party, constant failures, those people that are not members of the Republican or Democratic Party but that are members of Socialist Action or Freedom Socialist Party or the Communist Party USA, which always supports the Democratic Party, and I was a member of the Communist Party for 3 years, or ISO, and so on and so forth and so on and so forth. And a whole bunch of other organizations that are small organizations that have been created over the last 10, 15, 12 years, 4 years actually, a lot of those groups. The problem is we can't get our stuff together because of sectarianism. And I've told brothers and sisters, you know, I'm Green Party chair. Look, I'm willing to step aside and let Marty Goodman or somebody in New York City from Socialist Action be the rep. I've gone to people from Freedom Socialist Party. You had the ticket. I'll support you. We'll mobilize. We'll galvanize people within the Manhattan Greens, and we'll get some support behind you. I don't care. But we need unity. We really do need unity. And as long as we continue being so damn sectarian that, you know, even within the Green Party we have factions. I guess that's not secret. You know, we got like, I don't know, I lost count. Last time I think it was like 7 or 8 factions in New York City alone. 30. 30. You know more than I do. But in any case, that's in this room alone, right? And then that's a problem. We cannot get together because, why? Because we're too comfortable. I just got back from Puerto Rico and I'm going to finish up in 3 more minutes. I just got back from Puerto Rico on Wednesday. I was there for a week. And it's interesting, in Puerto Rico, all this talk about the crises and, you know, the junta that is declaring all the economic policies. It's gone back to crude, fascist, imperial rule in Puerto Rico. But you walk down the streets of any town in Puerto Rico, and people dressed just like here. The cars, they're all new cars. Everybody is having a, you know, 800,000 people left the country over the last 8 years. I think that did a big deal. I have 4 nephews under 30. They all studied in university, can't get jobs there. They all have good jobs here. So I think the pressure cooker thing worked. You know, the pressure went out, and I think the people that are in Puerto Rico can more or less survive. But you would think that even in Puerto Rico, they would be right now on the brink of an upsurge, and it's not. And that's Puerto Rico, which is really in a bad economic situation, and it is, but you don't see it on the streets. In New York City, we have a problem, and that is we live even better. I think that Donald Trump has the pulse on America, the USA, and he has the pulse on the people. I was surprised how many people, when we distributed tens of thousands of pieces of literature on the streets in Harlem, Washington Heights, all over in New York City, Manhattan specifically, during my campaign, how many black people and Latinos, even undocumented Latinos, they said that they like Donald Trump. And that is because he touched that little nerve. He was talking about their needs as workers, as poor people, as exploited or whatever people. You know, his discourse on immigration, a lot of immigrants themselves didn't feel offended. They said, no, but we need jobs, and he's going to bring jobs. So even though they may be undocumented, they have that naive perception. But I think that's where we on the left, again, we failed over and over again. We talk a lot about, in terms of international situations, whether it be the wars in the Middle East, or what's going on in Venezuela, or what's going on in Puerto Rico, whatever, but we talk very little about concrete organizing issues here in New York City that will make the difference. I'll finish up with this. And I think one big problem that we have, and again, I might have differences with some of the brothers and sisters here, but I think that we've fallen into the trap of identity politics. I'm Puerto Rican. I consider myself an immigrant, and I'm also vice president of an immigrant organization in Queens. It's called Sisa Pacari. It's 95% Ecuadorian. We have 2,000 paid members. I'm in charge of, I'm coordinator of labor affairs in that organization. But, you know, those people there, what they want is better jobs. Better jobs. And so regardless of who they want more jobs and better jobs, and this matter of persecution, constant persecution, that people almost become adapt to it. They know that there's this repression going on, and people came here already clandestinely, secretly, and they work towards it. But we have to have a message as a left, which will be able to recruit those immigrants to go out to the black community and so on and so forth, and go out, but approach people as workers. When we fall into identity politics, unfortunately, we fall into a thing where we try to organize immigrants over here, organize women over there, organize gays over there, organize blacks over there, organize Latinos separate from Indians, separate from Bangladeshi. I think the trap of the identity politics is also probably our second biggest, and these are just, you know, 2 ideas that I'm throwing out. One is we need unity. As the left, outside of the Democratic Party, as the left, we have to unite. We have to really look for a way, and I don't care who the candidate is, you know, we could support as long as we have a program. And the second thing is we have to forget about identity politics. Identity politics is being used in a sinister manner by the leadership of the Democratic Party nationwide. They try to approach women's groups, gay groups, black groups, whatever groups, and try to bring you into the party as that, but forget about the working class. And then I think we have to focus on working people. We have to see, and that doesn't mean, you know, that if you're a lawyer or you're a doctor, you shouldn't be part of it, of course. But the thing is that we have to, that's unfortunately where the left is strongest, among intellectuals, among people that are college educated and so on. We have to try to build a base within these unions and in communities that are working class union communities. Again, unity is what we need, and I hope that after this talk today, perhaps we could see some way that we could work together for some other electoral campaigns in the future. Thank you so much.
All right. Good afternoon. Just some background. My name is Dan Durso. I'm from Hartford, Connecticut. I'm a retired Teamster. I was a union steward, vice president, and political coordinator for my Teamsters local. I did some organizing with Universal Healthcare in Connecticut, the Healthcare Foundation, and I also worked on the Foxwoods Casino Organize and Drive with UAW. For the last 2 years, I've worked with our grassroots effort for Bernie Sanders, formerly the Bernie Sanders Connecticut team, and now we call ourselves our Revolution Connecticut team. And I want to thank the people at Social Action for inviting me to this panel. It's going to be a little kind of tough, but so I mean, in regards to the question, can the Democratic Party be reformed? I don't know if it can. I don't know. It's going to be a hard task to do it, but I think we have no choice other than to try to do it. One of the themes here under left tactics is any means necessary, and as far as I'm concerned, this is just another means of trying to affect social change. When I think about the work that we do, I like to think about it as that we're trying to improve the quality of life for all of us. So I picture an activist who works for social justice as a rambling, rumbling brook. The water is moving, twisting, and turning towards its goal. The goal most likely is a body of water like an ocean or a sea, but it goes around the obstacle it meets, and whether it's a log or a rock or whatever, and it just keeps heading towards its goal. Sometimes it's forced to go backwards a little bit so we can get around wherever obstacle is in its way. But the way I see it is that we're constantly pushing, we're constantly trying to get whatever our goal is. So as the left works, I think works for social change, we should be trying to do the same thing, just constantly trying to find a way to push. And when I think of doing that, the two things that stand out to me as far as creating change are direct action and electoral politics. We organize marches, which create awareness and support for our issues. We educate by speaking, leafleting, writing, letters to the editor, conducting workshops or events like this. And we organize like crazy. Meanwhile, we're all subject to legislation, much of which can restrict our ability to improve ours or others' quality of life. The legislation is created by legislators. Legislators are our elected representatives, representatives of whom many are regular people like you and I. Are there any elected people in here? No? Okay, well, there needs to be. Okay, so I want to have we want to have a say in who represents us. That means we'll vote. I'll vote for the person I like, and I'll work for the person I like. That's what drew me to who best represents our values. Vote for the person who best represents our values. That's why I like the Bernie. His values on the issues such as healthcare and college tuition and $15 an hour minimum wage. People would ask me if I loved Bernie, and I never met Bernie, and I have no idea if I would like him or not. But I did love Medicare for all and all the things, his message, right? So I liked his message. In regards to Bernie, I'll have to see. I'll have to wait and see if we ever meet. In my mind, those are the things we're fighting for. We're fighting for that. I was fighting for that message, and I like the fact that he introduced the word socialism into the mix. Every time he said the word, I can just imagine, young people running and Googling, what is socialism? And saying, wow, that's pretty cool. So I like that part of it too. Unfortunately, in American electoral politics, power is held by the two major political parties, whether we like it or not. Between the two, I would prefer to try to infiltrate and reform the Democratic Party versus the GOP, but if anybody wants to try to give that a shot, you're welcome. When I think of the Democratic Party also, I think of it the party from FDR. I think of the party that gave us Social Security and created all those jobs for working people. It's not the party we have today. The party we have today embraces neoliberalism, I think it's safe to say neoliberalism has been a disaster for the working class. At the same time, we're talking about a party that's taken on big issues and has some victories. When you talk about improving the quality of life, some of these enacted laws did that for many, including, I mentioned Social Security. They started the NLRB, made it easier for people to join unions. They passed the civil rights legislation, the Disability Act. I mean, there's lots of things that they passed. I mean, we tried to pass a decent health care bill. It didn't work. So anyway, has anyone seen the movie Mississippi Burning? It was about it was about the 3 civil rights workers who were murdered in Mississippi in 1964. And there was a scene there, and Dan Defoe, they were FBI agents, says to his partner, Gene Hackman, he's talking about the Ku Klux Klan and the corruption with the police there in Mississippi. And he says, this can of worms only opens from the inside. So that sort of sounds like the Democratic Party, right? So my point is, if you want to change the Democratic Party, you have to do it from the inside. I know it doesn't sound very attractive. Like anything else, it starts at the local level. In Connecticut, that means Democratic town committees. In New York, that means trying to get on one of the 62 county committees that they have. In Connecticut, there are 173 committees in 169 towns. So it's a smaller state with a lot more worms. So these committees, they all have their own set of rules. They all basically have it's like their little clubs that they have that we're trying to bust into. I didn't mention it, but I was a candidate. I was a Bernie Sanders candidate at the convention. And when we were coming back from the convention, the whole Dem exit thing was going on. And Bernie made a speech and said, well, we should really try to transform the Democratic Party. He said that, as he was exiting the Democratic Party. But he wants us to stay in it and build it. So, in regards to Keith Ellison, we had a lot of hope for him. We were really hoping that he would make it. We worked hard to get our Connecticut state committee to vote for Keith. Finally, that most of the members did. It's too bad that he lost, but it was a close fight, and we came close to putting somebody a hell of a lot better in his position.
I don't know Keith Ellison.
Keith Ellison, he was running for the Democratic national chair. He was a Bernie delegate, a Bernie supporter, and he was up against Tom Perez, who was the establishment's candidate for the chair, and it was a close race. But we've made some gains in California and Colorado. They've infiltrated a lot of their committees and changed rules. In Nebraska, they basically took over their Democratic state committee. Right here in New York, just recently, I think 2 weeks ago, Bernie delegate Christine Pellegrino was elected from Long Island's 9th district. An upset in a district that Donald Trump had won by 23 points. In Connecticut, Josh Elliott was elected state rep from Hamden. Josh was a big Bernie supporter and volunteer. He got some help from the Working Families Party. So what we've been doing in Connecticut is we're setting people up with mentors. So if you wanted to join your Democratic town committee, we would find somebody in that committee who would help you try to bust into it. It's not that easy. We've helped several so far. We've helped several, get on their Democratic committee. I've joined my own Democratic town committee. We probably have 130 people signed up that want to join up, but it's just a question of trying to learn all the ins and outs. Like I said, no, they all have their own set of rules. They all have their own bylaws. They all have their different meeting times, and you can't find this information very easily. It's not on the web. It's not structured in a very intelligent way. So the DDC, joining your local DDC isn't a picnic, and the meetings aren't that much fun, at least in my experience. You'll be asked to help with lit distributions and stuff like that. But at the same time, you'll decide who, along with your other members, who you are going to give that Democratic nomination to. It's like a miniature DNC. And then, then you're able to change rules, if you like. Some of those rules, like if you remember the big deal with the superdelegates, we've changed some of those rules. We changed some of the rules at the convention in the platform process, but it's a fight. All this stuff, you guys know, it's a fight. You do have the option of attending conventions, and you can sit on different boards. You can decide to make your DDC more open, with more open as far as allowing more members. But you got. One guy warned me, you can't, if you're too enthusiastic, they said, be careful because you'll find yourself in a leadership position very soon. So I guess I didn't answer the question whether the Democratic Party can be reformed, and I don't think we know the answer to that. And I was just reading the thing here, your program, and it said, one of the things it offers was the economic ability to bring production and reproduction to a halt through mass coordinated strike action, and I love that. I love the idea if we're able to get a national union and to do that, and to do stuff like that, because if we can't, in my mind, if we can't reform the Democratic Party, we can't have any success, and we can't stop the money, that's, in my mind, that's the only thing left to do is just starting to shut things down. But in the meantime, we're gonna try to do this. We don't know how it's gonna come out. So maybe your winding brook takes a different direction, but the most important thing is all of our work matters. And thanks for all you do.
Hello everybody, my name is Daniel Adam once again, and I wanted to start off with just the present one example I think that illustrates something interesting about the present state of consciousness. That has to do with the recent ad that Pepsi released with Miss Jenner, where there's some kind of demonstration. It might be a Black Lives Matter demonstration, and she comes out and gives a cop a Pepsi, and it all makes everything better. And we've seen a lot, this is a classic corporate ad. It's got all the major themes. Someone actually did a really great meme about it. They pointed out it's got capitalism solves everything, respect authority, everything's okay, reproduce and be happy.
Dress nice.
Dress nicely. The people in ads are better than you, more magical than you. What I thought was really special about this ad was the fact that the anger over it was so strong that Pepsi retracted it. I can't remember anything like that in my lifetime, and I think it shows a little something about where people are at right now. We have learned a number of lessons, and I think they're both recent lessons from actions like those organized by Black Lives Matter, but also lessons that people have learned over their lifetimes and over even generations. There's one story I heard recently about 1955 when a woman was, called up to the stand to testify about the Montgomery Bus Authority, and she was asked, when was your first issue with the Bus Authority of Montgomery? And she said, well, that was in June of 1919, and then she starts going all the way back from 1919 to 1955. And I think that has been happening, and it is happening. And I think many of us, we get lessons about the police growing up. Even those of us who don't normally have that negative an interaction. I grew up with a number of lessons from my parents, one of which had to do with the 1968 Democratic Convention. Now, they weren't really activists, but they did oppose the war in Vietnam, And they did support Eugene McCarthy because they thought he was going to end the war. He was against the war in Vietnam, and if he got elected, he would end it. And, you know, they had friends who were doing the whole Clean for Gene thing, cutting their hair, going door to door for this guy. And they happened to be in Chicago at the time of the convention. And they went, and they were tear gassed. And, you know, growing up as a kid, you hear about tear gas. That sounds really awful, someone doing that to your parents. But the really fascinating story was not actually the time they were tear gassed. It was a couple days before, when my dad had his brother in. They were walking down the street, and they see business owners boarding up all the windows. And my dad is young, but he knows enough about how things work, and he says, you know what, there's going to be a police riot here. We better get out of here. And sure enough, there was, because of course the police let the business owners know ahead of time. They're not going to smash up their businesses, because that's not what they're there for. So I grew up with that lesson. My dad had that lesson for decades. And if I ever brought over a friend, they would hear about that story. It was a deeply affecting story. And yet still, in 1992, when Clinton wins, my dad is hopping up and down on the couch and making various cartoon noises at the television and ecstasy. And my mother was ecstatic when Obama was elected in 2008. So I say this because I think we have to go a little bit beyond simply what we see in front of us in our immediate experiences, because those aren't often enough, and they aren't often enough to figure out what to do. So I want to talk about the origins of the myths of the Democratic Party and a few lessons about what it means for politics and how to act in politics. So the notion that the Democratic Party is something that can be for working people or for oppressed people rests on at least three major myths. The first is that the Democratic Party was once a people's party, or in some other way an ally of working people, and has only recently been corrupted by big money, and that it can somehow be redeemed or revived along these lines. The second is that the Democratic Party is somehow a class-neutral organization or an empty vehicle, and that it can be filled by any content, program, or purpose. Sometimes this view is applied only to the Democratic Party on a local level, and it includes the perspective that the Democratic Party is interested in power of any kind, or it can at least be shaped by it, whether it's money power or people's power. The third myth is the idea that the working class cannot do or change anything significant on its own, and that it needs someone to fight for it. All of these myths rest on the idea that the state is a class-neutral apparatus, or even that class itself is not a real or significant part of our lives. That's not really present on this panel today, but it was on an earlier panel that we had a discussion about this. But this would be to say that exploitation is either insignificant or does not exist altogether. The idea that the Democratic Party was a people's party goes back to the early years of the United States. This notion is a part of a larger misunderstanding of class struggle and social change wrapped up in the last few hundred years of bourgeois politics, including the Republicans' role in ending chattel slavery. Class struggle itself, in all likelihood, stretches back to the beginnings of exploitation, some 8,000 or 10,000 years ago. Our earliest record of this war comes to us in the oldest written language, cuneiform, an account of Sumerian peasants overthrowing their lord, etched in 2 clay cones, now in the Louvre. In every struggle of those who work for the gain of others, in various forms and to various levels of political consciousness, appears the aspirations of the exploited, especially those at the bottom, to end exploitation and class society altogether. These struggles of the oppressed are not waged, nor do they develop their objectives in isolation. At the same time, there are conflicts between the exploiters. For many generations, kings, nobles and priests, nobles and merchants, and so on. And occasionally a class from the middle strata will challenge an old ruling class for power and seek to become a new ruling class. These other conflicts are not concerned with exploitation as such, but in the form and in the division of the spoils. The bourgeoisie of Europe was able to replace the nobility as a ruling class only by putting itself at the head of struggles by peasants and other exploited groups. The more extreme version of this strategy was carried out by the young French capitalist class, which won the peasantry especially to its side by securing land for the tiller, abolishing old feudal privileges, and introducing democratic reforms like trial by jury. In It bound all the exploited classes under its banner by replacing feudal provincial ties with the nation-state, with its citizenship, and with the national army. I'm really sorry. I'm like really parched, and I did not have the foresight for water. Would that be? Thank you so much.
Yeah, I got these candies that why don't you have one?
Are they good for?
Yeah, they're made for that.
Okay.
Okay.
Thanks so much. Usually candy doesn't do that. Though it went further than any other capitalist class, it still stopped the struggle from going to the heart of class and exploitation itself. It could support the demands it did because, while the nobility depended on inherited rights to land for its wealth and power, the French capitalists extracted their wealth instead through the exploitation of wage labor, and so their immediate power was not threatened by the redistribution of land. Now, this story helps us understand also what happened in the United States. The two ruling groups in the early U.S. were merchants and slave owners. They could contain the aspirations for land held by European American settlers and immigrants through the dispossession not of feudal lords, but of the indigenous civilizations. This genocidal war, called westward expansion, was favored most forcefully by the slaveocracy, which itself hungered for land. For industrial capitalists, settlement meant a shrinking labor supply and thus higher wages. The slaveocracy, then, was able to win leadership over small farmers by fighting most vigorously for new land and policies that favored agriculture in general. This coalition quickly took the form of the Democratic Party. And this is where the earliest notion of the Democratic Party as a people's party comes from. When the slave owners began to fight with small farmers over some land, over the same land, the growing industrial capitalists were able to offer a better deal and made a bid for power. Industrial capitalists, they wanted to build up domestic industry at the expense of plantation profits and luxury through taxation on lucrative trade with Britain, taxation for infrastructure, new land for small farmers, and not for plantations. When slaveholders declared secession, Lincoln tried to prevent war with the 13th Amendment that would give slavery constitutional protection. This would have been the original 13th Amendment. The Civil War, then, was not started over slavery, but over which two ruling classes would dominate. Still, the industrial capitalists could not win the war with the South, especially considering it had the threat of a backing from Britain. They could not win until they won to their side free and enslaved African Americans who had already used the opening of war to intensify their fight for land and freedom. The Union Army employed the emancipation policy and won to its side the forces that enabled victory. Northern industrial capital supported Reconstruction afterwards in order to defeat its remaining political opponents. It then turned around sharply and supported the reinstitution of a racial caste system in the South to tie black workers to the land and divide white and black toilers. By this time, the slaveocracy had been obliterated. Racial caste was imposed to expand the power and profit of industrial capital. African American freed slaves would be denied the land won by French peasants some 70 years earlier and would effectively be denied membership in the American nation with all its related rights. I'm going to try this candy. Northern capital could support... I can't do this because it's going to...
Yeah, okay.
I'm just going to take another sip. Thank you so much. Northern capital could support emancipation because the form of exploitation imposed by chattel slavery was not essential to the power or rule of capital. However, exploitation was. And so the form was changed, but not the substance. After Reconstruction, the American capitalist class faced no competing class. It would wage no more revolutionary struggles. Concessions now would only be offered in order to head off the rise of the very class whose labor made possible the existence of the capitalist class. The capitalists, through their instruments of their two parties, restructured every institution in order to make possible the exploitation of wage labor, expansion of the police forces that originally grew in the 1840s from slave patrols and night watches, the constructions of armories throughout the country to break strikes with military force. As the slaveocracy had been smashed, the Democratic Party was reorganized to serve a section of the growing capitalist class. Representatives in the South who railed against the Northern powers were invariably themselves employed by Northern business. Many were employed directly by Northern railroad companies as lawyers. The Democratic Party was now an instrument of capital. Its representatives often It organized intense waves of repression to destroy the historic mass movement that exploded under Black Reconstruction. For some sense of the level of repression involved, just between 1867 and 1871, before Reconstruction fully ended, at least 20,000 people in the South were murdered. Repression accelerated after 1876. The KKK was not a significant vigilante group at this time. Most of the vigilante groups were Democratic Party rifle clubs. The Democrats organized succeeding waves in the 1890s and 1900s, and up through at least the 1930s, lynchings were public events announced in the newspaper. Trains would make special schedules to promote attendance, and local Democratic Party officials would make speeches before crowds gathered to watch their neighbor tortured to death. Now, between Lincoln and FDR, the Democratic Party exercised very little power on the national stage. Of the 14 presidents in that period, only 2 were Democrats, Cleveland and Wilson. The Republicans held the majority of the House in 21 of 34 Congresses elected at that time, and took the majority of the Senate, 28 out of 34. Over 80% of the time, the Republicans held the Senate, often by gigantic margins. The Democratic Party existed in this period almost entirely as an apparatus for maintaining the Jim Crow regime in the South, plus a few corrupt dictatorial party machines in northern cities like Tammany Hall, and like the one that my parents encountered in 1968 in Chicago. Its phony pro-South demagogy was matched by a pro-worker and pro-farmer demagogy that it could afford because it was based more in merchant capital than industrial capital, and because it was generally out of power on the national scene. It didn't have to take ownership for the many horrific policies of the capitalist class. When a Democrat did take the helm, he fulfilled his class obligations, as did Ku Klux Klan promoting Woodrow Wilson, who ran on a peace platform and then sent American workers into the most brutal inter-imperialist war ever seen till that date. He oversaw a wave of repression against workers' organizations before, during, and after the war, which imprisoned and deported thousands of militants and crippled numerous workers' organizations like the IWW. And he sent American troops to Russia to destroy the Russian Revolution. Though its more subconscious roots go further back, the main trunk of today's faith in the Democrats rests on Roosevelt and Johnson. Both of these figures took office in an epoch defined by an unprecedented and historic rise of the world's oppressed, frequently led by a working class equipped to end capitalist rule. Roosevelt and Johnson held office when this global upheaval placed particularly sharp pressure upon the American capitalist class. The policies they enacted were shaped first and foremost by the needs of this class, now in its imperialist stage, to defend its existence. The Great Depression exposed the weakness and brutality of even the richest capitalist countries, and even more so because the Soviet Union could maintain full employment. It even had work available for Western immigrants fleeing the tyrannic uncertainties of the market. Capitalism had to justify its existence, and in the face of mammoth struggles everywhere, often waged by workers and farmers ready to wrest power from their masters, as in countries like France and Spain. For an example of what this looked like in the U.S., in the last 10 years recently, there's been about 143 strikes of over 1,000 people. Now, that's major strikes. I don't have the numbers for major strikes. But in 1937, American workers carried out 4,740 strikes with 1.8 million strikers and 28 million man days lost. In 1945, with a similar number of strikes, they had 3.4 million workers on strike and 38,000 days lost. 1946, 4.6 million strikers and 116 million days lost due to strike activity. To give a comparison, while you had 4.5 million workers on strike in 1946, there had only been 2 million workers in unions at the beginning of 1934. This is why Roosevelt had to make the kinds of concessions that he made with Social Security and so on and so forth. They seized factories and sit-down strikes and fought police. In one strike in Minneapolis, they won the authority to decide who would actually be on the road. In other words, they challenged the bosses for the monopoly of authority in the towns where these strikes were carried off. How did Roosevelt approach these strikes? He passed laws against opposing war, advocating revolution, and used them to imprison labor leaders and revolutionaries. He used federal troops to shoot on striking workers. He called for and passed the first federal anti-strike bill. He seized the railroads in order to break strikes. He threatened to conscript striking miners to compel them to work under threat of court-martial. And he tried to institute a compulsory labor law that would conscript workers as part of the military to force them to work under pain of going to prison. This law he proposed in the very speech where he proposes his Economic Bill of Rights that Sanders used to explain what he meant by socialism.
Very confusing.
That is what this flowery language meant. And Sanders knows it because in his speech, when he talked about what he meant by socialism, he spent the last third talking about the need to fight ISIS and to create a grand coalition with countries like Saudi Arabia and Kuwait to do so. Okay, so I talked enough. I think that's enough history, and I think the other speakers have used far less time than I have. I don't think anyone's timing, or at least you're not interrupting me. So I'm going to jump to just a couple other key pieces. There have been many attempts to realign the Democratic Party and reform the Democratic Party. The first Labor Party was absorbed by the Democrats in 1820. The populist movement of the 1890s, which was highly militant, where farmers were armed and fought back against racist vigilantes, was absorbed by the Democrats after the middle-class layer of that movement voted to support Democrat William Jennings Bryan in their one big convention. After that, the populist movement disappears. The Communist Party, with its 90,000 members at various different times, lost much of the support it had because it kept supporting the policies of the Democrats. It supported it was the one layer of the labor movement that supported conscription of labor, that supported the no strike pledge. And for that, it lost enormous support among the working class following the war. The realignment effort that in some senses culminated with the 1968 convention to a certain degree succeeded because it did get the South out of the Democratic Party, but the party was, at that point, this Jim Crow in the South was dismantled and replaced by a new Jim Crow system that the Democratic Party supports hand and foot. Even Bernie Sanders supported for the 1994 crime bill, which is one of the foundations of that regime. If you want to get a sense of like how much harder it would be to realign the Democratic Party now versus the 1960s, the discipline in congressional votes had dropped from 70% in the 1950s to 58% in the 1970s. 58% in the 1970s, meaning only 58% of the people on the floor would actually vote along with the rest of the party. Well, today that discipline is now 90%, and it has been for the last 2 decades. It is a more disciplined party. It is more organized along corporate lines, not less so. And in terms of what are some alternatives? Well, while the realignment movement in the 1960s was organized, there was another effort in Alabama which I think deserves our attention, and that was the Lowndes County Freedom Organization. This was in a small county in Alabama, about 15,000 people. 80% were black, 20% were white. The majority of the black adults in this town were either sharecroppers or domestic workers. 90% of the land was owned by about 70 people. Of the 800 white men in the county, 550 were deputized as sheriffs. Wow. And the emblem of the Democratic Party in Alabama was a white rooster with white supremacy on it. That's what they faced. Now, the entire civil rights movement was largely armed for self-defense at this point. But these folks decided to organize their own party called the Lowndes County Freedom Organization, and eventually the Lowndes County Freedom Party. And in order to establish this party legally, they needed to have a meeting in front of the courthouse. The sheriff wouldn't let them do it. And the organization said, if you don't let us do it, we'll arrest you. And someone from the State Department came over and said, hey, John, the leader of this organization, if you do this and shooting takes place, what are you going to do? And Hullett said, well, we're going to stay here and everybody die together. Now, the Justice Department could have arrested everybody in this organization, but instead had a meeting with the Attorney General to get this group permission to have their meeting on the lawn. Why? Because they were afraid of what would happen if this group went ahead with their plans. John Hellett's orientation. He said, we have 7 people who are running for office this year in our county, namely the coroner, 3 members of the Board of Education, and if we win those 3, we will control the Board of Education, tax collector, tax assessor, and the individual who carries a gun on his side, the sheriff. Now, let me say this. A lot of persons tonight ask me, do you really think if you win that you will be able to take it all over and live? I say to the people here tonight, yes, we're going to do it if we have to do like the present sheriff. If we have to deputize every man in Lowndes County 21 and over to protect people, we're going to do it. In other words, they were ready to displace the monopoly on violence that the bourgeoisie in their local area held with their own. Furthermore, he said there are 89 prominent families in this county who own 90% of the land. These people will be taxed, and we will collect these taxes. And if they don't pay them, we'll take their property and sell it to whoever wants to buy it. And we know there are people who will buy land where at present time they cannot buy it. This is what it's going to take. In other words, instead of using elections to say we're going to take office and we're going to use the apparatus that the bosses have set up to make things better for people, they used elections as a moment to talk about what it means to exercise power. That is what an independent party should do. And in this case, they were part of a movement that was already heavily armed. There was already a mass anti-colonial rebellion around the world. There were already mass workers' states popping up all over the place. Che Guevara was still alive, doing what he was doing. And they knew they had the ability to make these kinds of demands. Now, they were isolated. It was just in Lowndes County. They did inspire the Black Panther Party. The emblem of their party was the Black Panther, but it didn't go much further than that. Now, in our era, we could create a labor party based on the trade unions that would be based on the ability of working people to shut down production rather than the ability of the state apparatus to make deals with employers to get one or another thing done. In other words, the reason why groups like Socialist Action advocate a labor party rather than some kind of general left party is because stuff only happens based on one or another class power. Currently, the power that it's based on is the power that I just described having developed over the last 200 years. It's the power of the state to repress by armed force the ability of working people to defend their rights. Instead, we need a party based on the ability of working people to exercise their power at the point of production. Thank you.
All right, well, thank you, panelists. And now we'll open up to questions. I'll take 2 or 3 at a time. Please keep your comments brief so as many people get to talk as possible. And then I'll take 2 or 3, and then the panel can respond. So in the green, and then we'll do in the blue, and then in the red.
Hi.
Which green?
Hi. Mr. Vila, right? Vila? I want to say hi because I am the national co-chair of the Green Party. My name is Darlene Elias. So I was really happy to hear some of the things that you were saying in regards to identity politics, that it's not working. I think the numbers are more like 1.5 million Puerto Ricans that have left the island, and they went and they relocated to Florida, a lot of them, right? The surge in population was there. And I remember Hillary appealing to the Puerto Rican population, in Orlando Rico area now, by using Jennifer Lopez and Mark Anthony, and kind of appealing to the identity politics. And people actually, the Democrats minimizing the actual impact, right, of the Puerto Rican population, with the issue around working class, right? So that's a really important piece, and I'm glad that you put that out there. My question to you, though, is I agree with your analysis of the Green Party as far as it being the main issue being too many factions, right, and sectarianism. My question to you, though, is what are you thinking about, you know, Democrats coming into the party, right? Because 14 million Democrats have exited the party. And they're right now are understanding that they failed, right? That they lost the election. I heard Tom Perez on CNN the other day encouraging Democrats to engage in social movement, right? No longer the identity politics, right? To do grassroots democracy. So what is your take on them coming in to the Green Party? Because it also sounded at the same time that the Democratic Party could perhaps be reformed if they took that point of view from the working class.
And yeah, we'll take a few and then everyone
Okay.
will respond. So go ahead,
Yeah, I just wanted to agree with your comment that the problem with the Green Party is that the left has abandoned it, marginalized it, not supported it, not got in and argued for socialist policies in the Green Party. It's a big failing. And the last 20 years that the Green Party existed has been, you can see it at the Left Forum. Why isn't Jill a headliner here at the forum? Why isn't Imam Baraka put on some little panel somewhere instead of heading up one of the big evening programs?
It was last night.
Well, no, he
Please
wasn't.
don't cross talk.
But anyway, what I want to say is I think that's changing. The Socialists and the Greens are beginning to coalesce and work together through Left Elect. And for people who are convinced you cannot reform the Democratic Party, I just want to announce a meeting Sunday, lunch hour. The Left Elect has called a meeting in room L284. Tomorrow, lunch hour is 2 to 3:15. It's for people who want to stop talking about building a third party and beginning to do it. And this means, and this is an attempt by a lot of leftists to unify and begin to enter into the elections as the left. So it's an important discussion. We have the entire lunch hour in a big room to do it in. So I'd like to invite you to that. The other announcement I want to make is the Black and Latino ballot box election is not today. It's tomorrow, 10 to 11:50. In room L76. So note that on your addendum that if you're interested in Black and Latino independent political action, that's been moved.
Thank you. And the last question.
This is for Daniel, correct? Well, I pointed at him. You made a statement earlier about identity politics and how it's the reason we're actually seeing some failure when it comes to like unity, when it comes to congression, but I disagree with you. And the reason why I do is because I believe personally that it's up to the congression to state its own autonomy. And its autonomy. So it's up to like the congression, like for instance in the intersectional feminist movement, we need a safe space for, you know, Black women as well as Indigenous women. And it's important to have solidarity, like, you know, for both of those different congressions. And if they state that they want to be, you know, autonomous and completely have their own separate, you know, delegation from that of the Indigenous, then we have to like respect that and be in solidarity with it. I feel like if we, you know, try to unify and get rid of those, you know, key points and, you know, factors within those different sections, then we kind of like lose that coin like aspect of being in solidarity and providing the resources when they need it instead of like invading that space if it's not invited. So can you tell me, how do you feel about that given the perspective I just gave?
Okay. First, in terms of the Green Party and the matter of the factions and tendencies, that's good, bad, and it's good. It's bad and it's good. I mean, it's sort of like this room. If everybody here had the same mindset, it'd be the most boring panel in the building. The fact that everybody here has a different point of, everybody has a different point of view, and that within the Green Party we have different points of view, and the fact that there are people here that are defending the Democratic Party, I think is excellent. I wish there were people here defending the Republican Party, and taking part in this, and it would be even richer. So I think that different opinions are good. I'm a person who likes, to get into all types of discussions and arguments and so on. I don't get offended. If Dan here gets offended, then I tell him I'm sorry, and I probably won't have another strong argument with him. But we'll argue or whatever, right? And I think that's the way we grow. I used to be a Republican when I was in high school. I was the only guy in my high school class that defended the war in Vietnam. And then my history teacher was a communist, made me make a book report. And in the process, I realized that the CIA defended Ho Chi Minh and so on and so forth, so that forced me to change my opinions. In any case, different opinions are good because it forces you to learn and change. So I think that's not bad. Now, the situation with outside of the Green Party, bringing in Democrats and so on and so forth, or Republicans, if they accept the views of the Green Party and they accept, in my opinion, socialistic type of anti-capitalist views, I think that's excellent. What is a problem is what happened once upon a time, as the brother was pointing out, with the Communist Party USA, where the Communist Party then got inundated, literally betrayed the working class and adopted the ideas of the bourgeois Democratic Party. So if the Green Party were to do that, bring in so many Democrats, no offense, people that had Bernie's social democratic, in my opinion, phony socialism views, that would be bad for the Green Party. But if we hold fast and have a clear ideology, I think that would be good. In terms of what the sister said, I agree with you. I agree with you. And some people might think that it's divisive to have a new left party. I welcome it, because maybe that new left party, if we were to have one, maybe that would do the work that we can't do within the Green Party. But then we're going to fight with you. Maybe we could look. You could grow, and we could grow, and then we could have unity somewhere along the line within that. If there's a new electoral party.
We've got the ballot line.
Yeah, I mean, we gotta practice. We gotta try to do everything that we can to try to make advances here for the working class and for the masses of people in this city. So I think anything goes. And then in terms of identity politics, it's real. It's dangerous, because I'm Puerto Rican. So all my life I've defended Puerto Rican issues, independence for Puerto Rico, socialism in Puerto Rico. I've defended the freedom for Oscar Lopez Rivera and all the other political prisoners. Incidentally, it's interesting that there's not a single, there was so many Puerto Rican political prisoners. I don't know if you know it, man. It's been a lot. They're all out of jail. But there's still a whole bunch of black political prisoners that are in jail. What the hell is going on? And I'll tell you the truth. In this sense, there's not enough black identity demanding that Mumia and all the other Black Panthers and so on be freed. We don't have enough of black emphasis there. So I do absolutely defend a powerful, very powerful black liberation movement in this country, just like a whatever movement, for liberation. But one thing is to defend these rights for women's rights, oppressed people or whatever. Another one is to have that become your major issue, or to try to play women's rights against black rights, against Puerto Rican rights, against labor rights. And then, it's a funny little game. Then when you get into power, as the Democrats have done and as the Republicans have done, and they've shown, both of them have shown with these failed policies, what they do is they play with you. And then in certain areas they give tokenism to some black people, in some areas tokenism to some immigrants or whatever, students over there, and they just play with you. And we need a party or united front of whatever form that speaks for everybody's interests. And then within there, that has to be made up of the different tendencies, of course. You're not going to eliminate, all the special interests or identity groups in this country. It's got to be our reality. It has to exist. But the thing is that they will have to give in and support something that unites everybody and helps everybody together. Otherwise, we'll never make progress in terms of the masses.
And does anyone else on the panel have some comments about those questions? Or?
Yeah.
Okay, we can probably just go right down the line.
Yeah, it's the factions, in regards to the factions always splitting us up, I mean, that happens. And I think part of the problem with that sometimes is you might have a candidate that supports this and this and this, but he doesn't support that, so you don't want him. Or you have a candidate that supports this and this and this, but you don't like the fact that he doesn't support that. So I think sometimes we let the perfect be the enemy of the good. So, I mean, being in contract negotiations, I know I want to get 8 weeks of vacation. I think that would be a good addition to your quality of life. Realistically, I was only able to get 7, but we were pretty excited about getting 7 weeks vacation. But so change comes. Unfortunately, it comes in small steps, and that's something we have to realize. In regards to another third party, I don't think there's anybody in this room who wouldn't love to be a part of a new third party. Speaking for myself, I thought Bernie had the perfect opportunity then to do that, and he didn't, and I thought it was of all the times for a big leader to kind of help a third party grow, he could have done it. I just don't have the faith in a third party being able to challenge either one of these. Like I said before, if we can't have any luck trying to do anything with the Democratic Party, then I would focus my energy on trying to organize a national union and start organizing strikes and shutting things down, because knowing, coming from a labor perspective, I know that stuff works. When you start, shutting down businesses and costing them lots of money, that's a sure thing. But that matters. Unity is very important when it comes to that kind of thing, and so that's what I wanted to add. Thank you.
So I feel like this is kind of quickly becoming, can the Green Party be reformed? I feel like it's a
green.
Oh gosh, yeah. It's like my nicest shirt that's like not for work. So I would say the answer is the same. No, it can't. It's got one of the same problems, which is that the Green Party is designed to take office and manage the capitalist state. That won't get us anywhere. That's number one. Number two, it is a pro-capitalist party. I didn't prepare.
Jill is a
Hold on, folks. Please, no cross-talking.
Let him speak.
It's a it has a lot of anti-capitalist people in it, just as the Democratic Party has a lot of Marxists in it, has a lot of socialists and revolutionaries in it, who are hoping to do the same thing in the Democratic Party that people in the Green Party who are revolutionaries are trying to do there. I work with Dan, I don't hate people who have a different approach on this, who do have this similar politics to myself, but it's a failed strategy. Jill Stein in the Democratic primaries called for a vote for Bernie Sanders in California. What is the point of that? When activists in the Green Party got together, fought for a resolution on Palestine that would call for a single state solution and one Palestinian state, there were some problems with it. I can't remember what they were, but it was a decent resolution for people to pass, right? Jill Stein, when she runs, she puts out a press release when Gaza is being bombed by Israel, calling not for the Israeli state to be disarmed. She calls for all the extra-legal groups to be disarmed, which is Hamas, but it's not the state of Israel, right? And she puts the onus on the Palestinians for their own, for being attacked, and she implicitly defends the right of Israel to exist. This is while the base of the party has already made it clear that they have a different position on this. It's a common feature of electoralist parties that the candidates get all the power and the ranks don't. There's two ways we can go right now. One is to have revolutionary socialist parties, small ones like Socialist Action, ISO, so on and so forth, that have a program that are for the rule of the working class and that use campaigns to call for that. We can have united socialist campaigns. All the socialists who were in the Green Party and the Democrats can get together, and all the independents, we can have united campaigns. That's one way we can overcome sectarianism. We can have a common platform we agree on, common minimal platform. We can make demands that show who should rule on the way forward for social struggles. Or we can organize a party based on masses of working people organized who were already organized collectively in things like unions to exercise their power where they can in the workplace in the way that they can collectively. Such a party doesn't necessarily have to have an explicitly revolutionary program to be a step forward. The Lowndes County Freedom Organization didn't say we're for revolution now. They were pushing it in that direction in their actions and by the way that they explained their very modest demands that they made. Like, we would like to have a black sheriff who is accountable to a black party, because this is an entirely black town that is subject to white supremacist rule. Labor parties, it might come out of a new labor upsurge, it might come out of something else, it might come out of the immigrant rights movement trying to oppose deportations, and people start doing things like strike action to stop deportations and then organize a party around it. But it's not going to be something that we can just force in.
I just want to say it was a little difficult for me to respond because people made statements rather than questions. So it's easy for me to answer a question. I don't know if somebody, I don't want to take over your role, but if somebody has a question I could respond to.
Yeah, we'll take another stacker.
Okay, thank you.
Can I say something very quickly about what the brother just said right now regarding the Green Party? I know that there was a rejection, a lot of Green Party members to what he said, and support by some people who are not Green Party members to what you said. And I'd just like to point out that the Green Party is a party with a lot of different tendencies, ideological tendencies. It is not a homogenic one party with one ideology for everybody and a solution and a program, national program for everybody. He's right. The Green Party is not your revolutionary socialist Marxist organization. It isn't. I'm aware of it. This man over here, Paul Gilman, is a Marxist, and he has been a candidate also in the Green Party. I consider myself a Marxist, and I have been a candidate, and I may be a candidate for borough president of Manhattan this year, maybe. It depends. Okay, but I'm a Marxist, but I understand that the Green Party is not a Marxist revolutionary organization. We have to understand that. But I think that at this moment, it's the big house that can include everybody. It can include everybody, and I think that's what we have to go for now. Now, 4 years from now, 1 year from now, 10 years from now, when we have a powerful left in this country, left, which doesn't mean just the revolutionary that see the working class taking power, we have a powerful left. Maybe we want to split the Green Party, or maybe the Green Party elements that are Marxists want to leave it at a certain point, but we're not there yet. Right now, we need to really, really strengthen unity and get a powerful people's movement going.
I'll take a few more questions. In the pink, I'll take the guy in the suit in the back, and how about you in the blue stripes?
Okay, and you can answer this very quickly. The biggest challenge to a new party, the Green Party, is apathy among millennials, to be honest. And apathy comes from two places: the demands of very demanding jobs, the burden of debt, student debt, and binging on Netflix and playing video games hours and hours at a time. How do you perceive overcoming those challenges?
Yeah, my question is for those on the panel who don't have any hope for the Democratic Party. So what do you say to the very real accomplishments of the Democratic Party? And I'm thinking of food stamps, Pell Grants, Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, the NLRA, and I say that as a union organizer for journalists. And given those accomplishments, why shouldn't we seek to complete those projects through the party? And just to add on that, I mean, the right has used that strategy since 1964 to great effect in the Republican Party.
I couldn't understand the question was that. Why shouldn't we try to seek those things through which party?
Through the Democratic Party, given their historical accomplishments.
You know, I just want to know if anybody in the panel could comment on the work on the Justice Democrats.
Yeah.
And the Justice Democrats and how they plan to reform the party.
Okay, great. So we started down here this time. We'll start down.
Okay. As far as the question about millennials, I think it's possible to get. We have a different world now, where people are isolated from one another. I think that's by design, quite frankly. If people are isolated, they are more likely to be apathetic. But I think we can talk about, we can see what has brought people together, and it's not really mysterious. I think real movements that speak to people's needs, Occupy brought people out. I wasn't a Sanders fan, but he brought people out. They were people who had been disaffected from the system, who came out again. Donald Trump brought more people out, and I'm not, you always have to say this if you point out anything like that about Trump. Trump got 2 million more votes than Mitt Romney did. And he did it, and I'm not in any way defending his program, but when people feel that their needs are touched, they come out. So I don't think we should complicate things by thinking we have to do something different and special for millennials or a certain group. People need to hear somebody at least even appearing to address their needs. And then people put down the video game, or they actually leave their house and go to meet other people or something like that. As far as the Democrats, their past accomplishments, all those accomplishments are decades ago. The last thing you mentioned was food stamps. I think that's late 60s, maybe it's early 70s. It's been a long time since the Democrats have given us anything. The only new things they've given us are mass incarceration and doing away with the safety net and taking away the right to public assistance. So there was a time when that was possible, but they, with their rightward shift, with their reliance on corporate money, I don't see that happening again. And I'll let someone else speak.
Yeah, okay, let's start with the Democratic Party. I mean, on their accomplishments, I think of a Marxist friend of mine just moved into a really old house that apparently was owned by a mayor or something of New London. And there's a plaque there that said, "This house built by so-and-so, mayor of New London." And he replaced it with this, house made by unnamed workers who gave their sweat and toil to make this house, right? Like, the bosses take credit for our work. And these are gains that we made. If you're a union organizer, look at the strikes that have taken place over the last century. When you see the strike waves go down, that's when you see the gains go down. When you see the anti-colonial movement go down, the gains go down. When worker states collapse, gains go down. It's like clockwork. There was more strike. There were years in the 1950s when there were more strikes and more days lost for strikes and more people out on strike than in the peak of the 1930s. The labor movement has taken a long time to die down, and it's only been through its support of the Democratic Party that that's happened. I'd also say to you, talk about the accomplishments of the Democrats, let's talk about the accomplishments of the Republicans. Mr. Richard Nixon gave us the EPA. He gave us affirmative action. He gave us the end of the war in Vietnam. He gave us the Clean Air Act, Clean Water Act. He gave us 3 Supreme Court justices who voted for Roe v. Wade. In fact, 5 out of the 7 of the justices who voted for Roe v. Wade were all nominated by Republicans. And why are we not worried about making sure the Republicans aren't in the Supreme Court so they can protect Roe v. Wade? He gave us OSHA. He gave us Title IX. I mean, this is not Richard Nixon any more than it was Lyndon Johnson. It was because people were really militant and fighting and risking during that period. And all the folks who were alive then are shaking their heads. That's what it was. And if we want to get back to that place, we have to do that again. And that goes back to the millennials. I love millennials. I hand out flyers, I sell socialist newspapers, and I'll tell you, I will talk to baby boomers, and it's like clockwork. They say, this is a nice thing, but socialism is really not going to work. I talk to millennials, and it's like, oh, this is great. Thank you so much. I really appreciate this. I think you're right. I think we're in a different era. I think there's a lot of things we have to get back that we've lost. But I like this new generation a lot. And I'm excited to see what it'll do. And I think that the big thing is we need to take action and demonstrate with our own demands. What's been happening, we had major demonstrations against Trump, and it's all been whittled away by this Russia stuff and by the Democratic Party taking over.
Thank you. I'm taking over now?
Yes, please.
Let's give a good thank you to Bernie Sanders for bringing socialism out in front of a lot of millennials who probably never weren't very familiar with that whole thing, like I was saying before. And millennials were a big part of the Bernie Sanders campaign. They made up the largest group, and because of, you know, and they were very delusioned, and they made up the largest group that participated in the Dem exit. I can understand this, you know, disillusionment. I went to the convention. I was disillusioned, but I've been around a while. In regards to Justice Democrats, I talked to some of those folks, but I haven't done enough as far as reading to really see what they're all about. But I'm gonna look into it some more because they seem like they might be, you know, like a force for change. And what's the other thing? The things that the Democrats passed. Yes, they've passed. You know, I have a list here of things they've of things they've passed that you know, changed people's lives for the better. Yes, some of these happened a long time ago, but you know, there is the Family and Medical Leave Act that wasn't that long ago, and yes, we got to shift it back, and that's what I and many others plan on doing. So,
real quickly, cutting to the chase. Yeah, this is a false perception that the Democratic Party actually legislated whatever because they were so nice and good to us. You know, they did certain things, certain progressive legislation, if we could call it that, because the masses of the people were out there demanding them, especially African Americans and especially labor unions were out there, and that pretty much, and during the 1960s, of course, you had the Puerto Rican and Chicano, Mexican, Latino movements throughout the country, which were also revolutionary. So they didn't want in the 1930s, they didn't want in the 1960s and 70s revolution to take place in the United States or people to become radicalized, so they came with these crumbs that they threw to the working class, and so we live a little bit better, so we accepted them. But it's false, it's not true. And in terms of the apathy of millennials or old timers, whatever, I don't see politics as, you know, black or Latinos, as millennials or that. I mean, I understand that that's there, but I don't deal on that. I deal on working class. You got millennials that are related to Donald Trump, and you got millennials that are related to me, that are working class, or to you, or whatever. You know, I try to speak directly to people that are of working class origin or middle class, that understand certain class issues and matters, and try to work from there to improve the lives of working people and see if we could work together.
Alrighty, so I think our time is actually up here. The next one. Huh?
Oh man.
Yeah. The next
handing at the door? Or
no, not yet.
No, it's lunchtime.
Oh,
we got time.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. So thank you everyone for coming. I really appreciate it. Thank you to the panelists.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Hello. It's good to meet you.